Rob Villanueva from Entrepreneur here. Third and final day of the European Forum. A day with rain, and a day where the discussion was centered around sustainability, defense, and what's happening with the local markets.
As any good European forum, we started early, and with coffee. At the table, voices from different groups. Aura Salla, Eero Heinäluoma, Sebastian Tykkynen, Elsi Katainen, and Li Andersson. A packed agenda for the European Parliament's autumn session. Hot topic: the EU-US agreement on tariff from the Trump era. How will it affect European industry? And what about EU citizens' data that companies like Google and Meta turn into business? Also on the table, Russia's war against Ukraine and NATO countries raising defense spending to 5%. Palestine and the famine entered the debate, along with questions about Israel's role in the arms trade. But the main tough line: how to keep Europe safe and competitive in the third year of the war in the neighborhood, and how to open new markets without losing its innovative momentum. Finland's member of the European Union, Li Andersson, spoke to Entrepreneur about this.
If I think especially about the startup scene in the technology sector, there is now talks within the European Commission about something that they call the 28th regime. And the idea is that at the moment you have kind of 27 different regimes when it comes to taxation and labor market policy and everything. And they are now, like, the idea is to look at whether for the certain startups, for example, you could create this kind of pan-European environment, a business environment. I have some doubts personally about this because I'm afraid that they will try to put labor policy or labor market laws into this. I see some big challenges there, that it might lead to actual lower standards in some countries than what we have. So I think we should be quite careful with how they approach that idea, but it's probably good for them to know that there is those kinds of plans. And otherwise, I mean, the idea in Europe has been that through the internal market, at least for businesses working in Europe, you would have as unified as possible a market to act in.
We also spoke with Timo Haraka, former Finnish Minister of Transport and Communications. The topic: data management.
EU has made some rules during the last mandate on data management, and the whole approach is to open up data to be widely shared also for SMEs and startups. And that's the whole reason of that regulation. And certainly if that is not up to the task, we need to review regulation. And I think that should be the rule in all data legislation or all technology legislation, because technology advances so fast that legislators and regulators are bound to follow. And we need to have constant reviews whether any legislation is up to the task. And if legislation is impediment rather than incentive for innovation, so we need to change rules. I think it's early days in many respects, and it still seems to be seen whether, for instance, the AI Act is helpful or the opposite. On the other hand, lack of regulation is not perhaps a choice that US has made. They have been unable to legislate federally on privacy, for instance, which for us Europeans and for European values is central and very important. So lack of privacy regulation on the federal level in the US is something that is not necessarily helpful, at least for the citizens and consumers.
At the end, the agreed-upon agenda from the 8th edition of European Forum, which also marked 30 years of Finland membership in the European Union, focused on security, sustainability, artificial intelligence, growth, and the role of Europe and Finland in a rapidly changing world. The discussion now shifts back to Brussels and national capitals as we wrap up our coverage of European Forum Turku 2025. What do you think was the most important topic? Tell us in the comments.